Hi, Queen Move viewers. How are you doing? Today is Wednesday, the 27th of November, 2024. I am here located in the beautiful city of Nairobi, Kenya. And today we have a very hot topic, and it's called basically the male abuse victims and the unseen injustice in the GBV. That is a gender based violence epidemic that is ongoing. Currently, we are going through a 16 days it's 16 days of activism on GBV in Kenya. And I believe it started on Monday. So today being Wednesday, today is I'm counting backwards. So Monday being day 16, Tuesday 15, Wednesday 14. So 14. And we're going to be counting down to when to when the clock strikes zero. So when we have no more days of activism left. We are very aware, Susan and myself and others on the board, that this discussion on gender based violence seems to focus most on women. But today we are going to bring to you the male victims of gender based violence here in Kenya and in other countries. And we're going to talk about it because it is a topic that is difficult and it's not what you call a quote unquote sexy topic, right? It's not considered usually a very sexy topic to discuss. This whole femicide, gender based violence, nobody likes to be associated with negativity. We all want to be associated with good things that are happening in the society. But you see, when these things now touch on our security, on our morality, ethics, our culture, our comfort level in the family, our relationships, then it becomes important. So before we start that, I would like to introduce Suzanne, who is in the background here waiting. I'll just allow her just to come on board. Susan is going to be joining us shortly. But in the meantime, I'll also be giving you the news roundup. Hi, Susan, karibu. I can't see you. I can't see your face, my friend. As you're adjusting yourself over there,
Hello.
as you're adjusting
Yeah, my
yourself,
I'm realizing that my camera is not well. I'm just trying to fix it.
placed. No problem, no problem, no problem,
I'm
Susan.
yeah.
But you've said hello, haven't you, to the crowd? Yeah.
Hello,
So I see
hi,
you guys.
hello
Okay.
everybody. Welcome to the show. Yeah.
Yes, welcome to the show, guys. This is Susan. Susan is a lawyer. She's also a mediator. She's a workshop facilitator. Myself, I am a program evaluator and a monitor, and also the host of the show. So, apart from that, of course, I'm a mother, a wife, and a mother of a son, and a daughter and another son. So, I'm a stepmom as well as a mom of a biological child. So, I think I'm in the mix properly. Susan is also a parent. So, all of us are concerned about, this whole issue of gender based violence and the violent culture that is growing, not just in Kenya, but globally. If you guys have been listening to the news, have you heard about the stories of women being punched in the subways in New York? In New York, in the US, you hear stories about. We've heard about people just randomly punching a woman just because she's a woman, just because they can do it. Another group that we also have that is come here to Africa is, and I didn't really want to, talk about them, but there are these people called the Passport Brothers, who are the African Americans who are in Kenya and in Africa, and every day they are online talking negative about their own women, about Black American women, comparing Kenyan women to African American women. And that hurts me because I have African American friends. I went to school in the US. I have African American friends who are ladies and gents, and especially ladies. And I know, the struggle of the African American. And I've also worked in the Wilder Research Center where we were going through what they call the Underground Railroad. And I understand, the role of women in emancipating the Black family from slavery and the real risks that they took to emancipate their families, to get them out of there to safety. And there are many, many, many women back then. And today, women have a big burden because there are a lot of African American men, Black men, who are incarcerated, and the burden falls on women for looking after their families, looking after their children, etc. So for me, I just don't have any time for passport bras disregarding our women, their women. And I'll remove Susan for right now until she sorts herself out here. So I just want to welcome our Black American brothers and sons to Kenya and to Africa, and also ask them to remember to respect Black women, because African women have also gone through colonization, and many Black women also were denied of the opportunity to be with their husbands because of colonization. And so it's actually a painful topic and a painful subject. It has caused a lot of family fragmentation also in Africa. And so this is not the time to come here with negative energy about Black women in America. We're not going to tolerate it. Most of us are smart. We're not going to tolerate that. And we really don't want to see Black people undermining each other and talking that way about each other. So, for those of you who are backstage, welcome. If you're watching from Facebook or YouTube, you just know that you can also come into StreamYard. You can come onto our StreamYard show and just get in, to the studio, or even into the comment section and just comment if you want, or, just stay where you're comfortable, basically. Yeah. So, with the news roundup, what's happening in Kenya right now? Well, I followed the news today, and I know that today is day 3, or if you're counting backwards, day 14 of the movement right now, which was instigated or initiated by the government with 100 million shillings, which is really a pittance, not really much money for the 47 counties that we have. 100 million shillings to basically say no to femicide. And we actually came up with a poster. Susan developed a very beautiful poster about saying no to violence. And it's basically says this: to physical violence, let's all say no. No pushing, no shaking, no slapping, no throwing, no twists, no hair pulls, no choke holds, no fists, no kicking, no dragging, no beating, no hitting, no knives, no guns, no strife, no weapons, no femicide, no androcide. Androcide, I guess, is the opposite of femicide, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And no familicide. No familicide, you see? So basically, we are warriors against gender based violence of any sort to any group. So now let's talk about what's going on in the counties in Kenya, which is related basically to our topic today. We will be touching on both male and female, both femicide, androcide, familicide, and gender based violence against men and women, just basically because I had my ear out to today's news. And one of the first things, unfortunately, I'm going to start with is a new thing that is happening in the county of Kajiado in Kenya, and actually also bordering on the country of Tanzania, where secretly families, the Maasai community specifically, the older grandparents are tricking their little children, especially girls, into going to get to do female genital mutilation, which is basically circumcision of girls. Because it's illegal in Kenya, what they're doing is that they're transporting them to the border of Tanzania, where they're not going to be asked any questions. So it's being called the cross-border FGM. So cross-border FGM is happening to children as young as 3 to 5 years old. So we have many cases of girls who are unfortunately undergoing FGM at the borders of Tanzania and Kenya, or even within Tanzania itself. They are being tricked and told that they will have indigestion, or that they'll have some sort of disease if they don't have FGM, especially from the older community who are the gatekeepers of the society, gatekeepers of tradition. But we know that there are so many risks with female genital mutilation, which is because of the way that it's done. It means that there are many risks to girls or to young women when they start to they become of childbearing age, because it affects the elasticity of their reproductive organs, and many girls actually eventually develop other complications, such as people know a lot about the complications of the blood retaining back there, and infections, and even death of mothers and babies because they're unable to come through those, through the vaginal tract of the woman because of FGM. So what we want to say is no to cross-border FGM because it's also gender-based violence. Another report from Kajiado County is that there are 157 young girls who are pregnant under the age of 18 because unfortunately there's been, because of the state of the economy, a lot of underage girls are being married early. So what they're saying is the response to this, according to the community and according to the NGOs that are working in the area, non-governmental organizations and community-based organizations, is that we need a holistic approach that involves men, youth, and women, to educate and sensitize the community about the risks of female genital mutilation, as well as early marriage and early pregnancy of young girls, because what it does is that it puts children at risk. It also puts the mothers at risk in terms of both their health as well as their inability to grow and mature and achieve what they need to achieve in society. It also creates an opportunity, or it makes them more vulnerable to gender-based violence because they're young and usually they're married by older men. Okay, so another problem is that there are, of course, associated to this, is that there are older men who are approaching young girls under the age of 18, and they were told that girls under the age of 18 are not old enough to give consent. And that applies to both men, both young girls and boys under the age of 18 are considered children, and they're in this country of Kenya, they are too young to give consent. So one of the challenges is that even though this is happening in the community, the members of the community are afraid to come out and approach the security agencies about this situation. Even if they know that there is this abuse of girls going on in the community, they're afraid to come out just because of the repercussions that they may face. Let me see whether Susan is back in studio so that she can join me here. Yeah, anyway, she'll come back. Yeah. Yeah. I think she's not yet back, but it's okay. Let's continue with our news briefing. I can see we have 2 people watching. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for watching and welcome. Oh, I can see Susan is actually back. Susan, you're here. Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Perfect. Perfect. I can see you very perfectly there, Susan. Yeah. So I just wanted you to keep me company as I give the news brief. Yeah. Since you've already said your hellos.
Yes, that's
Yes.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
listening.
Sawa sawa. Karibu sana. Karibu, Susan. Yeah. So we have the issue of FGM, early marriage, in the county of Mandera. Oh yeah, that's why the cases don't proceed, because people are afraid to record statements with the police. That is in Taita Taveta as well. 517 rapes of young girls, mostly by, believe it or not, fathers. Now we're looking at situations of incest in counties such as Taita Taveta, where they talked about it and they said that the majority of cases affect children. And the cases do not proceed to the courts because people are afraid to record statements. These are the gender-based violence issues that are going on, and also violence against children going on in our society. And as you know, it's also linked to the difficulty of economic times always make the most vulnerable, who are children and women, face a lot of backlash from the society. In Mandera County, they are facing a different kind of problem, which is the business of corruption, because there are problems with job security. And the thing is that people are bribing for everything from jobs. And that is actually something that is happening all over the country. We have a big problem in terms of bribery, businesses bribing, and in order to get services from the government. And it's a big issue there. In Samburu County, they also said that culture is dissuading men from coming forth to report gender-based violence. Now, this is a situation where men are the victims of gender-based violence, and because of culture, it's dissuading them. Therefore, the NCCK Church in the South Rift was talking to them during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and femicide, and promote. So they were talking to them to promote community dialogue. United Nations Women has been a very vocal voice to ensure that men in Samburu County can be reached. Samburu is actually it's a pastoralist group, and they're quite remote. And so, that's the reason where this is where you see now the role of the church and the role of the United Nations. Old women and men feel that they would be considered inferior or be mocked as victims of gender based violence. Yet women are free to speak about it. So they feel that the main issues that men cited were denial of their conjugal rights and denial of food by their wives. And that is considered abuse by their wives, or, by the women in their lives. And so they were assured that the law is for everyone. So men should not agree to become victims, and they should actually go ahead and report these injustices to the relevant authorities. When it comes to international partners, yeah, we see that the international partners, we have France that has implemented a 22 million shilling project within the forest, one of the forests, and for them, their goal is fire suppression, effective response, cooperation in terms of technology, partnership, tackling climate change. As you know, climate change politics is something that the new Trump administration is going to be dealing very seriously with, because they don't generally agree with the climate change politics narratives. And so I believe that France and all the international partners of Kenya who have an interest or a bearing on climate change will try to quickly implement their projects before the Trump administration comes in, and make sure that they're already ongoing in Kenya. According to them, they believe that those projects will basically benefit sectors in tourism, and they'll be used to track fires in forests and the destructions of the aberdairs. And people have been asked to stop activities in the forests. And you see, that's actually a political question, because you see, the forests do belong to Kenyans. Yes, there is issues to do with the destruction of the forest and things like that, but we also have forest communities who live in the forest. And we also saw that those communities were complaining about being, disenfranchised of their homes, where they have their ancestral homes where their parents were being buried, their grandparents have been buried for tens of, for decades. And now they're saying that these new rules and new projects that are being implemented by international organizations are excluding them and are not fair. They're not just to their communities. And this is something that we should be looking forward to, looking to review and revisit in future episodes, because today we are focusing on male abuse victims and the unseen injustice of the gender-based violence epidemic on men. Susan has done extensive research on this, and I'll be sharing with you videos and keeping you very entertained and alert. And so, Susan, welcome to the show. And all of you guys who are watching there, I can see you there. I can see the eyes. I've got 3 people. Karibuni sana. Susan, karibu, Madam
Yes.
Lawyer.
Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. And as Queen Mo says, this is, well, we don't talk much about, you know, um, gender-based violence against men. But it's time that we did, because they are victims too. And just to, as as Queen Mo was giving the background, she talked about the Samburu issue and why the men don't want to come out. And it's true. That is one of the reasons why perhaps we don't get that's why it's been called the unseen injustice, because they're unlikely to come out unless it's something that, they get the support that they need. Denial of things, including sex and food by wives, that's definitely domestic abuse, and it's a way of controlling. And that's something that we don't, that is not right at all. So before we get into it, I just want to share some of the effects of GBV, and just so that we can see that is a subject that we really must address during this time. So there are some really long-lasting effects, and some of them we know. One of them is death, and so that's when we have death, and then there's physical harm, where there could be debilitating injuries, which have long-term effects and change and completely drastically change the quality of life of the victim. And then we have a long-term emotional distress, the fear, the psychosis, the fear, the terror that you associate with it. For women, the unwanted pregnancies, also sexually transmitted diseases, even HIV. Um, and also the cost of looking after somebody who may be a victim, the medical care, the supporting care, that is something that takes away from them. And don't forget, if depending on the type of injury somebody has sustained, it completely changes their ability perhaps to work in a place they were working before. They may have to change their career, and some of them are not even able to work. I don't know whether you heard the video of one of the latest cases. Um, Florence Wanjiru, showed her fingers have been cut. She was talking about two fingers, one halfway and one halfway and 1/3 way of her left hand. And she was saying that, it's going to affect her ability to work and stuff like that. Some of the cases we look at, we will see some of these things as well. And then there's the isolation and victim blaming. We've seen that, especially, for instance, in the case of men, they would be saying things like, oh, how come they were not able to defend themselves against this attack, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And, so that's victim blaming. Same thing with the cases that we talked about in the last show. There was victim blaming of those girls who had gone to the Airbnbs, and they'd made dates online with these gentlemen. See, regardless, nobody should be subjected to any type of violence at all. And so there's victim blaming on them as well. And then there's cyber harassment. If you look at the videos, Florence Wanjiko, the latest case, the one in Nakuru, there's a lot of cyber harassment going on. They're blaming her. She's the one lying in the hospital bed, and they're still blaming her. Then coming up with all these videos and making up stories about them. And you really can't conclude just by seeing. You just see something and you can't hear the conversation. You can't say you have a complete picture of what is going on. So we are seeing that cyber harassment going on. There's some, even the comment section, there's a lot of fighting among the people who are watching because, they don't agree on the issue. But let's see how that case pans out. It also undermines a person's sense of self and self-esteem, and it may lead to things as drastic as self-harm, depression, and even suicidal ideation. Then we have, of course, there's threats to the physical and psychological integrity of the person. GBV is recognized as an obstacle to the realization of well-being, fulfillment, and self-development. It really has very deep-rooted. It's something that is so insidious, and it affects the personality of the person so drastically that their self-development and fulfillment is hindered and hampered by their experience. It's also an obstacle to the achievement of gender equality, as it may affect access to resources, and it negatively affects productivity, because instead of being in the workplace, you're in the hospital or running away or something like that, just to get away from this person. And of course, displacement, because sometimes you have to completely move away from your home and seek refuge elsewhere. So they're quite drastic effects. Um, uh, so some of the cases that I looked at is on some men, and maybe Maureen, you could show the one of Dan, so we can talk about it. So as Maureen is finding that video, Dan was a police officer, and he was assaulted. He's an acid burn survivor. He was assaulted by his wife. She poured acid on his face. He's now blind, and he has gone through so many surgeries just to reconstruct his face. His eyesight could not be saved. In fact, when they had a squabble, they had a disagreement. He and his wife had a disagreement, and she was staying with him. They work in different places. They were working in different places. So she was now at the home where Dan was staying. He is a police officer. So what happened is that on the day she was leaving, he was asleep in bed, and she poured the acid on his face. He did not know what it was. And he got up. He just felt a lot of pain. He got up and stood on the ground, and then he got electrocuted because apparently she had poured some water on the ground and then put the immersion heater. You know, the immersion heaters that people use sometimes to heat water. It was on the ground, so he got electrocuted. So he started screaming. His neighbors rushed in. They rescued him and rushed him to the hospital. It's a story I'd like you to hear from him. Um, uh, yeah, so some of the things that he talks about are some of the things I talked about in terms of the effects of GBV. His life changed completely. He lost his sight. He used to be an investigative police officer, could no longer do that. When he came back to work, he was given a desk job. He had to completely relearn. He had to go through rehabilitation, and he had to learn how to read Braille. He had to learn how to use a computer for people who are visually impaired. He had to learn daily living skills. He had to learn how to walk with a white cane, and his whole life changed. And
Yeah.
don't forget, he went through so many surgeries, so many surgeries. You can imagine the cost element, how much it cost. He was away from work. He had to get somebody to be with him. So his cousin was with him. And this was somebody who was able to move from point A to B. He wanted to study forensic science, and he had to change his course of study because of, you need your eyes to be able to do that. So have you been able to get the video?
Yes, 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 Susan. I have it. I have it on here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Let's see if we can watch it.
So I'd like us, as we are watching it, just to observe
My
and
child
pick up the
passed on
things that
in
you can see.
2013, May, and after we had buried
Can you hear?
him,
Yes.
my wife told me that she had been advised that we need to have another kid so that she will heal from the incident, from the loss. But at that point, I told her that we cannot do that, not because it was it was a bad decision, but because I felt that there is someone who is trying to intrude into our personal life. In September, she came to visit. We stayed together for 2 weeks, and then at one point she told me she wanted to take the child's belonging with her to Nakuru. So I refused because I asked her, there's no need, you can take this because we are still together. You are my wife, I'm your husband. So there's no need. So at that point, we had a quarrel over the issue. So I called her mom, I explained to her, and she called her to her home to go and maybe explain the reason. On 21st September 2013, the same year, the day she was preparing to leave, the previous night This was on a Saturday. On Friday, I was on duty the whole night. So I came to the house at around 5:30 a.m. in the morning. So when I came to the house, she was still sleeping. I went to the bed. I was so tired. So when I went to the bed, I slept. She woke up as she was preparing to leave. She was taking some of her items. So as I was sleeping, few minutes later, she poured a solution on my face. I felt a burning sensation. So it was so burning. So I thought that she had maybe poured hot water or cooking oil on my face. So when I jumped out of the bed trying to get some water so that I can reduce the burns on my face, I stepped on the floor and she had poured some water and connected the electricity. So when I stepped on the floor, I felt a shock. I just screamed for help and my colleague came for my rescue as she had already run away. The first colleague who came in, when she saw what was happening, she just got hold of me, took me to the vehicle, and I was rushed to hospital for treatment. At that point, I was not seeing because immediately she poured the acid on my face, on my eyes. Now, it was a blackout for me. I never saw anything. Since that day until now, I've never seen that. While I was in the hospital, they wanted to do a surgery on my eyes. But the same day the surgery had been scheduled to be done, I was lifted to Kenyatta. So when I came to Kenyatta, the doctors said they let them deal with other wounds because the face was so wounded and it was so fresh. My chest, the right shoulder and the limb, it was it was an open wound. So they wanted to deal with it first as they had seen the report of the doctor who wanted to perform the surgery. So later on, they realized that this acid was still burning, was going deep. That's when the doctor told me that now they can do nothing because the burns, the acid was still burning at that moment when I was in the hospital. So that was when the doctor told me, here, Dan will not see again.
As you can see, Dan is a police officer. He was working, he was cited, and he has undergone so many surgeries. You could see his face, the effect of the acid, that even after the acid was poured, it continued to burn. So even the eyes, he lost his eyesight completely. And now he's doing a desk job. He had, at some point, when he realized that he was not going to be cited, he had suicidal ideation, and he was in a hospital bed in Kenyatta Hospital, and there was a window, and he was considering, throwing himself out of the window. So when we're talking about the effects of GBV, these are some of them that devastate the things that you cannot see. And for him, because of his experience, he actually did start a foundation that is a safe space for males who have been subjected to GBV. And he said he started it in June 2020, and he has had so many people coming, both males and females, wanting to attend. So of course he met the lady. I watched other videos. He met his ex-wife. She's now an ex-wife, and asked her, why did you do this to me? And she said she was misled. So he didn't follow it further because he said he was surrounded by his loved ones who were really not very happy with the lady, and so he decided just to leave it. But he said he forgave her and he got on with his life. For Dan, we're lucky that Dan was lucky. I think his personality is very sort of like optimistic. He was able to adjust and turn his life around. And he started this foundation. He has assigned counselors. There are counselors who pick the phones and they talk. He has a toll-free number. We will get it to re-listen to the video. Not now, but we will try to get it and post it. So for men who are being subjected to GBV, it's a safe space for you, and it's something that we should, that you can be approached. Now you can see his nose. Apparently, one of his nostrils needed to be opened, and he's still undergoing surgery for that. He went to the US, got one surgery, but he's supposed to have a total of 6. So you can see, how long he's been undergoing surgeries, so many surgeries, the cost of it, his dependence. He just completely altered his life. And so these are some of the consequences of GBV. They're unpleasant, and that's one of the reasons why we must say no to physical violence. Right? Today we're talking about physical violence, although GBV includes sexual violence, emotional violence, and even economic violence, economic abuse. So today we're just talking about physical violence. So he is a survivor of it, and it's an example of the severe injuries that he has. And in fact, I'm very sure he didn't talk about it, but I'm sure he has to buy certain creams, special creams for his skin. I'm sure he was wearing that hat because he cannot just walk outside in the sun without experiencing some sort of discomfort or pain. And this happened as an adult, so you can imagine how difficult it was for him to transition from one thing to the other. What about his earnings, his economic power? Luckily he was with the police, so he continued to work there. That his job has changed. He's sitting behind a desk. He was moved from Kisii and now he's at the industrial area. And what's so interesting about his story is that uh, he has been called to counsel other people who have had suicidal ideations because of illness or injury that they've sustained, and that's actually what stimulated him to study counseling. And so that's why his foundation is there.
Yeah.
So
Susan, yeah, I'd like to stop you a
yeah,
little bit here and say
yeah,
thank you very much for highlighting that, and also apologize that I didn't put the video maybe that had the contact, because of course, we have to make sure that every video that we put up is going to be acceptable to YouTube. But this is just another video from a station, Ebru station, that used to be there, and I believe it would be okay for us to use that video. But this is really disheartening, a very painful story. I cannot even imagine, what Dan has been through. And I don't understand what would drive a wife to do that to a man you once loved. What in this world? What? Until you are misled. You are misled. And this man has to live with that condition until he's 90, 100 years old. This is unfair. It is brutal, and it is also a crime. In my view, that is criminal, and she should be serving a sentence somewhere. That woman. Seriously. Huh?
yeah,
Okay, now
yeah,
let me take a few comments from our people here. First of all, I want to
yeah,
welcome everybody. Yeah.
yeah,
Let me start with who is on board here from the very beginning. We've got quite a few people who are on here with us, and we really appreciate that. Mato, thank you very much. You say, yes, I understand the topic is difficult, Mato, but thank you for being here. And yes, it's not easy. You're a man. It's not easy to deal with it, but let's talk about it. Ideally, we should be having men talking about this, but we women, because we have 25,000 words, we are going to talk about it. And also because we are parents of both boys and girls, we are concerned about the security and safety of both men and women in relationships, especially. Angie Mokora, thank you so much, Angie. She says this is really important issue to tackle. Well done, ladies. Thank you very much, Angie. Fia, she's just saying hello, Fia. Thank you for being here. She's a mainstay of our show. Mato is also saying something about Shiko. Right now, we're not talking about Shiko Mato, but yes, she's talking about seeing her hugging the watchman, and we're talking about that video. Mato, just come in, just come on board. Come on board. Come and bring us your manenos on here if you have time. Yeah. So then we have Angie. She's saying she's recommending some reading material for us. It's called Confessions of Nairobi Men. Some of the stories are so heartbreaking. Men do go through a lot of abuse and don't speak up. Those of us who are women with women friends, we even have friends who are abusers. We know them. We do know them. We see it, and we reprimand them. If you're a good friend, you do reprimand a fellow woman who is abusing their spouse or their partner, or if their daughter is abusing. There are some ways that you can abuse a man without being detected as a woman, and we're very smart about it. And I think those are things that this is one of the reasons why we were just talking earlier about the digital era, and the fact that today I was actually talking to a carer, my mom's carer actually, about the digital era. She's mainly from the village, and we're talking about the fact that long ago, Susan, if you switch off your microphone, maybe a little bit, switch off your sound, then we won't be hearing. Yeah. Thank you, Susan. So we were talking about the fact that before we never used to have access to communication like we do now. Yeah. So what used to happen is, because we had the telephone, the dial telephone, even that was on the wall with a padlock. Although many of us learned how to dial those numbers, even with the padlock there. What used to happen is, because we didn't have an opportunity to be on the phone, on the internet as much, we had relationships with our family members. They were very strong. Every Saturday, every weekend, we would be thinking, which auntie are we going to visit, or which one is coming to visit us? We'd have a lot of people coming to visit. You guys remember, some of us who are older, many people would be coming to visit us. So we developed relationships, very close relationships. And on top of that, we were monitored very closely by extended family members. Now, with the breakdown of that, because nowadays most people are spending most of their time in bed under a cover, under the most beautiful duvet, right? On their phone. Thank you very much, those ones who are doing that right now and watching us. Thank you. But many of us are on a phone, or on a laptop, on a tablet, and hiding behind a screen. Behind that screen, they say an idle mind is a devil's workshop. And I also saw somewhere where that said that getting information from the internet is like drinking from a fire hose. It comes at you like, whoa. There's so much information out there. There's no time to digest it. There's no time to decipher what is accurate, what is not accurate. So what happens that you tend to you become a real, you become a master at nothing, literally, and so what happens is that without the transparency, without the societal oversight on young people, or even ourselves, it becomes very easy to commit crimes. Rarely did we ever hear, it was very, very rare that we heard of things like, wife battery. It happened, but it was rare. And at least there were forums where people could go to. Male battery, or male, should I say, male abuse was dealt with. It's not that it didn't happen. It was, at least there were forums, there's places to go. Men had places to go. They knew how to talk to one another, and they had ways of handling things. And when you wouldn't hear much about femicide, killing of women, children, rape of children. You rarely heard about those things in those days. Today, it's like the mainstay. It's like every single day you hear about it. Just now, as I was coming in, I heard about we were listening to the news, and we saw a story about a man, a doctor, an intern, who has just unalived himself today. An intern. Do you know about that, Susan? An intern has unalived himself. And just the other day, an intern unalived herself, a lady. Okay, because of lack of payment. We have a situation where our society is mentally ill. We have a society that is sick. So when choosing your partner, you have to be super, super careful, because those societal, those societal barriers, those societal support systems no longer exist. It's basically you and the world. Yeah. So I don't know, Susan, I don't want to say too much because I know we have so much to present right now and I don't want to take too much time. Hopefully we'll be here maybe for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half
Yeah.
max. Yes, so I'll allow you to continue to present. But just in response and to say yes, thank you
Okay.
very much to the reference to the materials and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. Yeah. So, in fact, when you said that his wife, Dan's wife, should be charged, she has been arrested. She presented herself to the police station. First of all, she ran away, but eventually she presented herself to the police station. She's been charged with attempted murder. And I just wanted to give you a statistic here that came out in the Kenya Demographic Health Survey of 2022 that said that 34% women and 27% men in Kenya have experienced physical violence since age 15. And of these, 16% women and 10% men experienced physical violence in the 12 months running into the survey. So women in Kenya generally have experienced physical violence more frequently than men. These are some of the conclusions that were drawn in that particular survey. So yes, indeed, she has
Susan, now we're talking about the
um,
KDHS. Sorry, let me just
yeah,
also respond to that. The Kenya Demographic
yeah,
Health Survey. When you look at those figures,
yeah,
34% women and
yeah,
27% men. That's just, if you look at,
yeah,
if you round them off, that's about 30%. That's a third. That's a third. The difference is not
yeah,
so large between the men and the women. Yes,
yeah,
it's there. There's a
yeah,
difference. But that goes to show there's serious underreporting of male
yeah,
abuse, of male victims of GBV. This is actually
yeah,
alarming to me. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, actually, these are some of the fears that they have, like you mentioned, culture, and that's why Dan started his foundation, because he wanted a safe space for males to go to, and so that they could speak, because he felt very isolated and stranded. He could not say much. He didn't know where to go, and of course, the issue of going to the gender desks. Their gender desks are for females, not for males. And I think for Dan, he was lucky because he was a police officer. So he must have got a lot of support from his colleagues who ran with it, did the investigation, and the lady has been charged. So she's an ex-wife. He says he has forgiven her, and but that doesn't stop. The fact is that the offense was committed. I just want to continue with the discussion. So we have another case. We're going to look at
Mhm.
3 men. So that was Dan, and Dan is a survivor. So the next case we look at is the one of Ruth Kamande.
Mhm.
Ruth Kamande is the beauty queen, a Langata Women's Beauty Queen of 2016. She was 21 years old and from humble beginnings. And in 2015, she met one Farid, and she sort of became very obsessed with him. The people around them said that the relationship was very toxic and one-sided. And I'm going to tell you some things that you should note about this relationship. It was one-sided. Her love for him was unrequited, and she was obsessed with Farid. He moved his house. She tracked him down and moved and found his house. She got into his house and she refused to come out. Farid was not comfortable with her being in his house, but he couldn't get her out of the house. She even went to his phone and she blocked some numbers on the phone. She even went through his stuff and found some letters, some old love letters from girlfriends of the past. The uncle who tried, there was a time one of his uncles came. They were supposed to go to where the uncle was, but when they didn't come, the uncle came to Farid's house and he found that they were arguing about something. When the uncle tried to appease them, he noticed he was disturbed by Ruth Kamande's behavior.
Mm.
So on the fateful day in September 2015, she stabbed him. And she stabbed him a total of 25 times, different parts of his body. The first stab, he was screaming, help, help, in Kiswahili. Help me, she has stabbed me. And he was screaming that way. The neighbors heard, they came, they tried to get into the house, they tried to rescue him. Eventually, one neighbor was able to break a window and they could see inside, but they couldn't get in and they couldn't reach him. So they could see bleeding. The place was it was a chaotic scene.
Susan, let me ask you.
Came.
Let me ask you a question. There's a question that's going to be asked here. We know that men are stronger than women. How is it that she was able to overpower him?
Yeah, well, that is that's what we call victim blaming. But
no, I'm just wondering, was he asleep? You see, for example, in the previous one, he was sleeping, right? So the thing is, I know immediately you're going to jump to victim blaming. That's not it. I just want to understand how a woman can, and this is the question that police are going to ask. How can a woman stab a man 25 times and he doesn't, with his strength, he doesn't push against her? Or is it because of culture? Is it that he wouldn't beat a woman? What is it? Why?
From what when they did the postmortem, they think that he was faced away from her. He was sitting perhaps at his desk working. And so she came up from behind and stabbed him. And in such a way that he was not able to move. So she stabbed him from behind and continued to stab him. And the interesting thing about the postmortem report is that the stab was like methodical and slow and deliberate. And there were to all parts of his body. There was, he sustained stab wounds to his chest, to his hands, to his leg, to his neck, to his abdomen, to his shoulders. So several stab wounds, in total 25 of them. So this is a 21-year-old girl, and this guy is 24 years old. And so what she did is when she was found, the neighbors actually saw her, with a knife, because they were able to break the window. So they saw her with a knife, blood on her body, and the guy also, down. And so she claimed, she came up with the story that was that she had found out about she had found these love letters, and that she had discovered he had HIV, and that he had raped her, and then, and he had HIV, and that, he was the aggressor, basically. That from what the postmortem reports showed is that there was no way he was the aggressor because of the angle of the knife, the angle of the knife wound. And so she was disproved. At the end of the day, they found that one, she was not raped because they tested her. One, she was not raped. Two, that Farid did not have HIV, so that was a lie too. And her story was not plausible because she claimed self-defense. So she was charged with murder. The 15 witnesses were called for the prosecution. She was convicted. She was found guilty. She was convicted, and then she was sentenced to death. She appealed.
Can I play
the
video for you? Can I play the video at some point? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ready, or did I just interject at the wrong time?
No, you can just show the video.
Yeah. Let me play the video. I don't know how long it is, but I'll play what I can from it. Yeah. There are several actually, apparently. So.
Women prison beauty queen Ruth Kamande has been convicted over the murder of her lover. Ruth hit headlines in 2015 for allegedly stabbing her boyfriend 22 times after a quarrel. High Court Judge Jessie Lasit today found Ruth Kamande guilty of the murder of her lover, 24-year-old Farid Mohammed, in September 2015 after the two were engaged in a quarrel at their house in Buruburu. The court ruled that Kamande's actions proved malice after a post-mortem revealed that the stabs were not done simultaneously but rather in intervals. The court further dismissed Kamande's account of self-defense, saying that examinations revealed no evidence of rape as she had earlier alleged. Kamande, who won the 2016 Miss Langata prison beauty pageant where she has been remanded for 2 years, will be sentenced on the 11th of July.
Okay, that's one of them. It looks like there are others. Should I play others or should I just let you comment on that? Okay.
So she was sentenced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, yeah. Just leave those because okay. So she was sentenced. She was found guilty, and then she was found guilty on the 13th of December 2017. She was sentenced on 18th of July. 18th of July 2018, and then she appealed. But the Court of Appeal also said that they upheld the judgment of the High Court. She's also gone to the Supreme Court to appeal the sentence.
Yeah, let me play
now, one of the things that was said
has upheld the 2016 death sentence against Ruth Kamande, who fatally stabbed her boyfriend 22 times in his house in Buruburu Estate in 2015. High Court Judge Jessie Lasit sentenced Kamande to death in 2017, saying the prosecution had proven beyond reasonable doubt that the accused committed the offense and had acted on purpose. Kamande, who was later crowned Miss Langata Women's Prison, had appealed the sentence. Kamande stabbed her boyfriend Farid Ahmed following a quarrel over some text messages on his phone. She's been remanded at the Langata Women's Prison for the last 5 years.
I apologize, Susan. I thought you said play it. So it already was playing. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. So she said that she was not remorseful. That's what you said. She was not remorseful. She was not.
Yeah, the judge said she was not. The Court of Appeal also. Yeah, the judge, the trial judge, said she was not remorseful, and that she was a cold-blooded killer. And reasons why is because she made sure that nobody could enter the house to rescue. She had actually locked them inside the house. So, and also Farid could not exit, even if he had the ability, he could not escape. And she was manipulative. And what she did to try and avoid charge or conviction, they said there was an injury in her stomach. She said that he fought back, that they were fighting. But the postmortem, the doctors, the person doing the postmortem said that the injuries that she had were self-inflicted. So she had some injuries, some superficial injuries on her stomach and other places, but they're saying she inflicted them herself. So she took her time, even when, like you heard them saying that the attack was deliberate. She took her time, and she even took Farid's phone after. So she interfered with the telephone after. So they're saying that she was not remorseful at all. So Amnesty International has requested for her sentence to be commuted. And I think anyway it will happen because I think there's been a successful bid by the for Kenya not to carry out the death sentence. Not to mention that it hasn't been done for very many years, since I think the 1980s or something. Although they sentence people to death, they just literally just serve a life sentence. So this is Ruth Kamande's story. You think about the effects of this. This is this young man. We're talking about the effects of it. This is a young man. He was a University of Nairobi graduate, computer science graduate. He had risen through the ranks in the job that he got. He was now a supervisor. And this young lady had just come and completely and, turned his life upside down. So when you look at that type of situation, his productivity was affected most likely. He was living in some level of fear, because if you hear him saying that she was staying in his house, she followed him. He moved his house and she tracked him down and came to his new residence. Those are red flags. Those are red flags. You've told somebody, you don't want somebody to know where you live, and they find out where you live. So in these type of situations, what should people do? I mean, there was that option of him notifying the police that he was being stalked, because literally this was stalking. But again, the issue that we talked about earlier about the stigma associated with talking about somebody, and you're a man and now you're afraid of somebody who's perhaps half your size, but who makes you uncomfortable. You can see she's not a very large person. You look at the video, she's not a large person. But even the blocking of numbers, deciding who he's going to talk to, interfering with his phone, going through his stuff and getting letters, control. You asked when we're talking about Dan's story, the question that you asked was, why did it happen? Again, it's an issue of control. Dan, in the previous story, the acid burn case, he had blocked an intention of his ex-wife to take the baby's clothes, and she wanted to have a baby immediately. He was not comfortable with that because they just lost a baby. He was not comfortable with it. He also felt there were people interfering in their lives. She wanted to take the baby's clothes and go to them to where she was working. She was working in Nakuru. He was working in Kisii, and he vetoed that as well. So that inability to control decision. She wanted something and he was saying no, and he had his reasons for it. He felt, because I listened to other videos, he felt that it would not help her to heal if she had those clothes. Just make her perhaps more morbid. So he did not want her to have the baby's clothes. So that's what he was thinking about when he was selling her no. He was not just selling her no because for the sake of it, but he believed he had good reason. So the other thing in Dan's case, sulfuric acid is not the type of thing that you find in people's homes. You have to actually literally go to the shop and look for it. So it was premeditated. She planned to harm him because he had resisted a decision that he made. And the things are, the telltale signs, the red flags about people who are very controlling are, they're over a period of time, and you can see that this is somebody who wants everything to go their way. And we must learn that when you're two people, that you must learn to listen to one another and come to some sort of agreement. That tool of communication, that tool of conflict resolution, we must develop them and nurture it. And if you have a tendency to be very controlling, that's something you must know. It's a tendency that you have, and manage it in such a way that it doesn't become a handicap or a problem in a relationship that you have. So that is Dan's story, but we're seeing it again reflected here in Farid's story. Farid this lady came into his house, was controlling everything, was taking his phone, blocking numbers, managing, telling him who he can talk to and who he can't. When you block numbers, that's what it is. The fact that he seemed to have felt helpless and didn't feel like he had anywhere to go. He told his uncle about it. So his uncle was aware that there was a problem, but none of them really seems to have taken steps to, maybe get the police involved. Maybe there was fear of some mockery or a poor reception from the police. So we hope with these cases of aboricide, which is what is called, for men, it's called aboricide, will be addressed with some sensitivity. And there'll be many groups like Dan's group that has providing a safe space for men that will come up to help with that. So notwithstanding Ruth Kamande's many achievements, because she's now she's graduated as a lawyer from the University of London. She's still going to spend the rest of her life in jail because she was found not to be remorseful at all. So that the next story is of what's his called? He's called Mwangi.
Susan, before you go to the next story, can you take comments?
Yes.
Stop a bit and take comments from these people. Okay, so let's see.
Yeah.
Okay. Marteau is saying, but fact, women are more emotionally abusive to men till it gets to that point. Walk the bars in Nairobi. Men don't want to go home till the women go to bed as they're avoiding trouble. Mato. Yeah, but it's true. There are so many men hanging around in the bars, Susan. There are. Mato, I agree with you. There are many men hanging in the bars. In fact, they even get drunk. Apart from just hanging out, they get drunk so that when they go back home, they pretend that they don't even know what's going on and they go straight to bed without even seeing the poor children, It's really unfortunate because why is it that men, Mato, can you explain to me, why is it, or anybody else who's listening, why is it that some men would rather stay in an abusive relationship with their wife than actually initiate a divorce? Because we know, or separation, because we know that the majority of divorces and separations are initiated by women, aren't they? The question is, what is the psychology behind that? Maybe Susan might even have something to say. Tell us, Mato, or anybody else in the comments. Fia is also saying that this issue has become worse in the last 10 to 15 years. In fact, you're right, Fia. And in fact, since 2020, during COVID, it's escalated. Susan was mentioning figures like 700% increase. Yeah, in domestic violence since COVID. I actually heard about it. I don't know whether it's Susan or whether I'm misquoting Susan, but I actually was listening and hearing that the number of cases, even in the UK and in other countries, has increased significantly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to play you some videos from other countries so that you see that this is not just a Kenyan issue, this is a global issue. And men should not at all, men should fight. Basically, the way they're born to fight, usually men would prefer to walk away. But what if you can't? What if you're going to walk away like Dan, or not walk away at all? Like this other girl's victim here. Yeah. What if you're not able to walk away? What if?
Yeah. It's a stigma that's associated with it. Men are supposed to be tough. They don't talk about their issues. So they need a space, they need to unlearn that, because actually when you talk about things, you actually safer because people know, and the perpetrators are relying on the fact that you will not talk about it, and nobody will believe what you're saying anyway. And even if you go to talk about it, your standing in that space will your area of influence or space will be diminished. And like the men are supposed to be strong, they're supposed to be stoic, they're supposed to be able to take pressure, they're supposed to manage the people in, they're the heads of the family, they're supposed to manage things. But you see, violence is wrong. Whether it's coming from male or female, it's not right. It's not the right way to handle things. And some of the side effects.
Let me also mention, Susan, that it probably is the reason why internationally you hear about this term, the high value male, or you hear about the mesosphere. Yeah. Majority of these men, I bet you, have been in relationships that are abusive. And instead of addressing it on an individual level, they would rather get quorum from other men and create a platform where other men can come and bash women. So instead of they still haven't dealt with their own pain individually. They'd rather come on this forum and somehow or the other find a way to get another man to bash women. So it's unfortunate because, women tend to read this. and see that there's a hurting man behind there. There's a man, these men are actually hurting, and they're hurting badly. But instead of dealing with the issues on an individual level, they go out there and they gather support from other men. And then when they feel that they have, a platform with other men, then now they can come back and bash women. And not only do they bash the woman that they've been with, but they bash all women. And that never resolves anything. In my view, it doesn't. It doesn't actually resolve their pain. It doesn't. And you also see it from these people who they call themselves passport bros. I mentioned it earlier. African Americans who are coming to Kenya and going to other countries. And what they do is bash their African American mothers and sisters and exes and whatever, forgetting that Africa is predominantly Black, predominantly African. This is just the wrong place. You can't do that. You can't do that in Africa, because then you're bashing every single African or Black person in Africa. And Africans also have their trauma from colonialism. So really, this is not the space. Men just need to find a way to address the issue on an individual level. Really, that's how I feel.
The support group system is actually one of the healing devices where people sit and they talk about things, but it's supposed to be in a confidential and sort of a safe space. And those are stories that they will share with one another. They will support one another. If somebody is perhaps slipping into either self-harming or having suicidal ideations, they can support one another, because the effects of violence is just so deep, and people react and respond differently, because we can see Dan was somehow able to forgive, but we might find another story where the person is not able to forgive, and we'll think about revenge, because Dan in his story says that he really struggled with himself, because his thoughts were revenge. Because you can imagine, you saw that image. It's a disturbing image. His eyes
The
are
extent of his
shattered.
damage is
Yes,
unbelievable.
his
Oh
hand,
God.
you can see that even his hand seems to have got burned. So it's quite an extensive injury that he's forgiven, and he's been able to move on and help other males who are in the same situation. So Farid's story is very sad, because his life was cut short. His potential was cut short. He was not able to, to live a fulfilled life, because it was cut short. And in fact, they argued, when they were trying to, in the appeal, when they were trying to say give a different sentence to Ruth, when her counsel, her advocate, was trying to argue that, he said, "Oh, she's very accomplished. She has so many. She's been doing this. She's rehabilitated. She's what. But the prosecution came and said, "Look at this young man. His life is He didn't even have an opportunity to develop himself and to grow and to live, a full life, because you cut it short." So anyway, that was Ruth's. Somehow, despite her beauty, in fact, one of the things they said was that her beauty obscured the real tragedy that brought her to the jail, into the jail system, into the criminal justice system, because people just saw her beauty, and then but for the family, his Farid's surviving sibling, she was completely devastated by the whole thing. I mean, she could not believe that her brother passed away in such dire circumstances. In fact, the other thing that other red flag about Ruth was that she actually went and introduced herself to Farid's sister in his absence, and said, "I'm his girlfriend." So the sister was like, "Okay, I mean, that's really unusual, because my brother would have come with you and told me this is my girlfriend." But she came and told, she was alone, and she was aware that she was it's obsession. Let's call it by its true name. She was obsessed with Farid. It was not love, and And that's why because she couldn't control him anymore. I mean, that is why she ended up doing what she did.
Yeah. In
So
other
there's
case scenarios, Susan, we have situations like that actually are live right now. We have a member
yeah,
of somebody, we have a member of the Senate in our country. I'm
yeah,
not going to mention her name,
yeah,
but we
yeah,
have seen the obsession, between, the obsession that has been in the newspapers, that has been displayed, and the kind of following that she did, to the point where she created a situation where the wife of this well-known person, well-known musician, let's call him, had to leave the country. She had to flee the country and go to another country
yeah,
because of this obsession of this other, third party in the
yeah,
relationship. And she happens
yeah,
to be somebody who is a beauty. She's supposed to be attractive.
yeah,
Supposedly she's supposed to be attractive, and she's also powerful.
yeah,
She has state machinery at her disposal. Basically, she is powerful. Yeah. So the thing is that these things are playing, and Kenyans, unfortunately, the way that we react and the way that we see these people, some people actually consider her a hero. They're her hero. She's a good role model for them. And the same thing with the men. A lot of men are like, yeah, 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 yeah. You can have another one. You can have another wife. You can have another children. Have as many women and children as you wish. But we forget about the real dangers, you know, the
now that you
potential.
talk
Because
about,
especially when there is
yeah,
no, when there's no consent from
yeah,
from the first wife, from the wife, you know.
now that you talk about that, the third case involves such a mess where George Mwangi, um, actually, George Mwangi had a wife, and then he met uh, Chania. She's called Chania, and her last name is Chania. What is the first name? We'll see the video. And he met her. She had tried to be. She had made a bid during the last election for position, but she lost. And so she was actually the second wife, because when she met George, he was married to somebody, but he met Chania and fell in love with her, and he got married to her. So George was an engineer and working in Rwanda, and at some point their relationship must have got sour, because whenever he came back to Kenya, he would not stay in the same house as she was staying. He would stay in a house in Mangu, and she would stay in a house they had in Thika. So sadly, October 2022, she unalived George. Well, the case is ongoing, but she has been arrested and charged with murder. So what happened is like a love triangle. So he had the first woman is out of the picture completely, but then it starts with this lady called Chania, and then there's George got another girlfriend. So apparently on the fateful day, they had attended a function, somebody's birthday party, and George came with his girlfriend, and his wife was also there, this Chania lady. So remember I told you that they used to stay in two different homes. She was living in Thika and he was living in their house in Mangu. So after the party, when they came back home, this girlfriend used to stay in some rented facility which was near the Mangu home where George used to stay. So George walks into his house and he finds Chania inside the house. And so Chania, he was hit with a blunt object, and he is also an acid burn victim. An acid was poured on his face as well. So his face was disfigured. That's what the police found, that he had blunt injury to the head, and also disfigurement of his face because of acid. What she did, she hid it. She bundled him off, and his body was found in Kieni Forest in Atondo North. Used one of the workers, a new worker in their premises, because she could not lift his body herself, to help her to put the body in the double cabin, in his car, actually, his double cabin car, drove to the forest. He was abandoned disposed of in the forest, and she came back, and she went and she reported after 2 days or so. She went and reported that he was missing. So she reported this in 2 different police stations. Luckily, she was caught on a CCTV camera with the car, driving his car and all that. And that's actually how they were able to locate where the body was abandoned, where the body was disposed of. Because by this time now, the girlfriend was also looking for him. As had alerted people that she'd not seen him. They were supposed to meet somewhere, and this was not like him, and he didn't turn up. So she was looking for him too. And so eventually that's how they found George Mwangi. So he died. He was unalived in very, very disturbing circumstances. But this is an older couple. It's not young like the previous one. And you can check the relationship. Chania was a second wife. Ruth was, I don't even know whether to call her girlfriend, because she was forcing herself on Farid. Dan's case, that was his wife too. And like you mentioned earlier, these are people who's supposed to love you. They're supposed to love you and not want to harm you. But this particular lady, Chania, when they investigated, they found that she had several cases pending in court. She has been charged with fraud. These are criminal cases. And she has also some sort of social media program, and she talks on it, and she was even singing some choruses on it and trying to encourage people. And like I said, she was trying to be a politician, but her personality is coming out very clearly about what type of person she was. Even when she was arrested and taken to court, arraigned before the court, she told the cameraman, apparently, make sure you get a good picture of me, just put good pictures of me on the in the news and whatever. So she was not also showing any remorse or anything like that. So she's been charged as well. So her case is pending. And this is just a tip of the iceberg, where males have been victims, and to different degrees. You can see 2 of them were unalived. In one case, weapon of choice was a knife. In George's case, it was some blunt object, not a sharp one, and also but there was a lot of blood. Apparently, when the police went into the house, when they got into the house, they said this is the scene of the crime, because they found blood spatter, all over the room and stuff like that, and bloodied sheets and signs like that. But it appears that even after she unalived him, it's like the body lay there for like 2 days before she decided to dispose of it. And she was in that house. So it's quite a disturbing case. And there we have it. And so when you look at the effects again, because we're looking at it in terms of the effects, the surviving family, this George was buried very quietly. It was like a private funeral. It was done very quietly, and they were devastated because they could not understand what had happened. The family apparently knew about the girlfriend because he had introduced her to them. They knew about the girlfriend. So the question is, when you look at this type of situation, is you realize that these are people, all these perpetrators seem to have had a common behavior, a common behavior, and that is wanting to be in control. And when they feel that like they're losing control, they become very dangerous, not into, if I may use the slang, not into Ruth. She knew he was not into her. She tried to control him, but she felt she was losing control. And that's why she locked them in. When she found the letters or whatever, she locked them in and decided she was going to bring this thing to a conclusion. Tanya, George is out with his girlfriend. Everybody knows he has a girlfriend and a wife, but he seems to prefer the company of the girlfriend. And to the extent where he even went with her to a relative's birthday party. She lost control. She has lost her, her feeling of she's dominating and she's in charge there. Again, here with Dan, when the issue of the decision was being made about, her wanting to have a baby immediately, and he said no, and wanting to do this, and he said no. And then things just spiraled out of hand. Yeah, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, in this particular case, because the situation is a bit different. In this particular case, would you call that control or would you call that betrayal as a wife? That she took matters into her own hands because she felt betrayed by her husband. When you have a marital situation, it means that the couple has taken vows to fidelity to one another. And it's not a polygamous marriage, is it? So when the one of the partners decides to have another partner from outside there, and it sparks jealousy and anger in the other partner, would you call that control or would you call that betrayal?
Okay, the reason why I'm calling it controlling behavior, because you have to look at the other behaviors that she had. You have to look at the other behaviors she had. I know apparently she had also, threatened and confronted this other lady. Going to the extent where you come into the house and ambush somebody and decide, actually she intended to unalive him. That was literally the situation. So it's sort of what most women would do is that if somebody makes a choice like that, you leave or you disconnect yourself from that person if you're not comfortable with it, or you live as if that person doesn't exist, or you live, you separate yourself from that person. But for that choice to go and unalive somebody goes to a deeper personality issue, because there are many women who find themselves in that situation, but they don't unalive their spouses. They walk away. They choose differently, and that's why the poster that we prepared, it says, "Make the right choice. Make the right choice. Stop the violence. Stop the violence." There are alternatives. You have the choice to walk away from a situation, but when you decide to take such drastic action, you have literally devastated our complete family, the siblings, the parents.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why I brought that up is because in the case where turn the matter around, okay, I know we're talking about male abuse, right? But let's talk about femicide. A lot of the reasoning that, the blame the victim kind of reasoning that I hear is the lady alikula fair. Okay, so or the lady basically has manipulated the man, or the man has committed to her, and he has committed to, no she he has committed to her, she is committed to him, they're in a relationship, maybe they're in a marriage, and she stepped out of the marriage, and therefore she deserves to go, she deserves to be unalived. All right, but in this particular case, this is a woman who unalives her husband. In this case, would it be justifiable for the woman then to say, well, he stepped out, so he deserves to be unalived because alikula fair? I've been cooking every day. I wake up early in the morning. I prepare his socks. He doesn't even know where they are. I'm the one who finds them. I go shopping. I go doing this. We have a joint account. He's been spending my hard-earned money on this girlfriend and all this stuff. So this is the kind of reasoning, and this is the reason why I do not believe in that kind of reasoning also, that just because you have a marriage does not mean, or just because you're in a committed relationship, or just because you've been dating somebody for 10 years and you've been paying their school fees and everything, that you have a right to unalive them when they decide that you are no longer the partner they want to be with. So in this particular case, the woman, I believe the woman was unjust and she committed a crime by unaliving her husband. Yeah, she did. She committed a crime.
She had,
And that one deserves,
yeah,
that one
she did.
deserves punishment. Just the same way as a man who, would be in her position. Just the same way that a woman would be in that same position. Let's say she's the one who has also taken off and decided to be with another person. If she was also murdered, then in that
Yeah.
case, she also deserves justice. Because bottom line is that you have taken the life of someone, and that is illegal.
Yeah.
It's a crime.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. That is unaliving is never an option. It's not an option. Definitely that was premeditated. Remember, I told you the George was also a victim of acid burn, and sulfuric acid. You don't find it in
Dan.
people's homes. You do
Yeah.
not have it in your homes. So
Yeah.
she deliberately went and purchased something that was going to burn. So it was premeditated, and she waited for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. And if he got a Susan, there's a problem with your internet. Okay.
blow, because the blow was to the issue about. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Now you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So it was premeditated. She had the sulfuric acid. I mean, nobody has that in their homes. I mean, even chemists, it's one of these things you really don't have in your home. So she
Mm-hmm.
intended to cause him harm. He was hit the blow was to the back of his head, so he could have walked into the house, him unconscious, and then continued to batter him
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else in the house. So um
Mm-hmm.
unaliving is never a choice. Violence is never a choice. Is never the right choice. But you have a choice to do the right thing, and that is really literally to walk away from such situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know Macho wants to talk about Wanjiko's case. Wanjiko's case, people are really, really on the cyber. On the doing cyber harassment. Everybody has a version to that story, and yet somebody said, "Oh, there's a new video that has been put out." So when I looked at that video, now they're trying to show that they're trying to imply she's promiscuous and she was having some sort of affair with some watchman, because there's a place where they go is it out of sight, and then they come back in, back this way, back into focus. So they walk out of the focus of the shot, and then they come back into the focus.
Mm-hmm.
What is noticeable, if you ask me, is that she gave him something. She goes back, and when she comes back, she's wearing a different dress. Her dress is red. It was black before, now it's red. And then she leaves. But whatever the circumstances, there's nobody has any right to batter anybody like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's one last case I want us to talk about, and that is Maureen's case. Can you find it? And I've given you an actual
Which one?
time.
Okay. I've got several
Well,
cases, but
Maureen,
this one now is Queen Mo.
Maureen is I've written physical. Have you seen? I've written physical something at the bottom.
Okay.
So Maureen is and for her and Dan, the reason why I chose these two videos is to show the effects of violence on survivors, the extreme cases and the effects of violence.
Are you talking oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about, okay. I get it. I thought you were talking about myself because I had also picked some cases. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Susan, I wasn't able to download some of your cases because they're not from the regular station. So maybe you can just discuss it. But I have some others. I have 2 others that I'd like to discuss too once you're done.
Oh, I thought Maureen's is on Citizen. It's not?
Was it? Okay, let me check.
Anyway.
What's the name of it? Anyway, you can put it for me in the private chat. I can probably see.
Yeah, so anyway, Maureen and her siblings were orphaned. So she came to Nairobi to look for a job. She was the main breadwinner. And she found she was not making enough money. It was a challenge to continue working. So she got married early. And she got married at age 15. Already we can see there's a problem there. So she marries this guy. And they have 2 children. And he brutalizes her. He makes her life really, really difficult. Maureen was so severely beaten. 2 of her fingers are missing from, I think she had to have some surgery. So her fingers are missing and there are cuts all over. And also her eye, one is completely shut. So edged, and then he was released on bail. And when he was released on bail, she's completely terrified of him. So she lives her life in terror. She lives her life in terror. And this man is aware that she's afraid of him. So he's sort of stalking her because he sends her messages to say, I saw you somewhere. I saw you here. I saw you there. And she gets completely terrified. So somebody like that, you can imagine how the quality of her life is. Somebody who's running always, hold a steady job because she has to keep running. She has to keep, and she had, this man was so violent and so rough on her. Even the neighbors' children didn't want to play with her children because they were afraid of this man. So these are now the effects of violence on other members of the family, not just the wife who's receiving the main violence, but in the children's, the quality of their life was affected. The neighbors were afraid even to interact with her children. The neighbors' children would not play with her children. So they would play together. So eventually she had enough and she was able to escape him. But somehow he continued on, and her reaction was like, I don't know where he saw me. I'm not sure. He's saying he saw me somewhere. Where did he see me? I didn't see him, that sort of thing. But he seems to be, continuing to intimidate her by sending her these messages, and she's completely thrown off, thrown off by that. And you see, there are very many things that are happening in that case. Apart from the physical violence that she suffered, there's the emotional violence you can see, the terror she lives with. It's affected her quality of life. She's not able to perhaps hold down a job because she has to keep running. She's literally rendered, it's, I think, a very difficult way to live, especially if you have children, because it's not just her who's running, she's running off with her children too. It's affected her physical appearance. She's not an old lady. She's youngish. So it's affected her physical appearance. She has 2 fingers missing, which means also there's certain jobs she cannot do. She's facially disfigured, which again will affect her self-confidence. And perhaps people will ask her, how did that happen? And she has to relive the trauma, talk about what has happened in her life. So gender-based violence, it has those terrible effects. And when we see the extremities of it, that's when we realize how it has no place in our society. This subtle this case of Wanjiko, of Florence Wanjiko, that lady from Nakuru, there's so much information we don't have. And yet people are drawing conclusions about it by watching videos and cyber harassing her. And she's laying in a hospital bed. And we'll only know at the end of time, and at the end of when the case goes to trial and we start hearing the evidence, what the truth really is about that situation. But for now, she should not be victim blamed. And, whether the man is whatever, but at the end of the day, everybody, the question we should be asking is, where did she sustain those injuries from? So somebody
Susan,
asking,
before we move off topic a little bit to females, we're still focusing on males here.
Yeah.
I want us to keep the focus on males. Yes, that's true. Wanjiko, that cyberbullying is very sad and it's very hard to watch. But if you'll allow me, Susan, I just want to play a video to show you that this violence is not just necessarily female on male. It's also sometimes male on male violence and male on male abuse. Okay, and so and even male on children abuse, which is very sad. Yeah. So I'd like you to listen to this briefly.
Man in Mombasa is accusing county officials of sodomy. The man alleges that a group of about 20 county officials abducted him at his home in Bamburi and assaulted and sodomized him at Miritini area before dumping him near the Mwakirunge dump site. As Francis Mutalaki now reports, a section of Mombasa residents held demonstrations over the alleged incident.
In one of the hotels in Mombasa, a 25-year-old man struggles to sit. He says Thursday morning at around 8 a.m., a group of about 20 county officials broke into his house and demanded that he accompany them to an unknown place to apologize for criticizing the county government of Mombasa.
Kufika pale nikasikia mlango umevunjwa, ndo nikatoka kuchungulia hivi, naona sasa karibia vijana 10 na tulipokuwa tunatoka watu walitaka kuleta fujo, but wakawaambia ameitwa na kiongozi fulani akamwombe msamaha, hakuna shida, tutamrudi naye tu hapo.
But that was never to be. He claims he was taken to a hotel and bundled into a private car, hands and legs tied. He was then wrapped in a sack and taken to Miritini area, where he claims he was assaulted and sodomized by 2 unknown people.
Kanivua nguo, kulikuwa kuna vijana wawili wamewekwa hapo kando. Au vijana ambao walikuwa wamewekwa hapo kando sio wale ambao tulikuja nao kutoka Bamburi alikonichukua kwangu. Kuna hawa vijana wenye hubeba takataka kwa hizi gari za kubeba uchafu zikienda kutupa, hawa ma street boys. Wakawa wamewekwa hapo wawili wamevalishwa mask, wakavua suruali wakanilala kwa nguvu, wa kwanza mpaka kamaliza. Wa pili pia kanilala kwa nguvu mpaka kamaliza.
The victim, a blogger, claims he was taken to Mwakirunge, wrapped in a sack, and was rescued by a good Samaritan who assisted him after hours of questioning.
Nikaanza kuhojiwa na kutishiwa, kwa nini umekuwa ukiingililia kazi za issue za Mombasa? Kwa nini umekuwa ukikosoa kazi zinazofanywa na kiongozi fulani? Kwa nini umekuwa una mdomo?
The matter has been reported at Bamburi police station. Earlier in the day, a section of Mombasa residents held a peaceful demonstration along Moi Avenue to the Coast Regional Police Headquarters, where top security officers promised to take action.
Waje tuwasikize kunaendaje, because katika sheria inakata kuwili. Tunaweza kuwa tukaongea vitu ambayo kidogo na tena kama ni investigation nafanywa, so let us allow investigators wafanye kazi yao, because tukimwaga hapa tukiwanjani investigators tafanya kazi gani, si ndio? Lakini zaidi ya yote tunashukuru na tutachukua hatua. Count on us 24/7 na tunawashukuru kwa information.
So far, no arrests have been made over the alleged incident. Francis Mtalaki, Citizen TV, Mombasa.
Yes, guys, this was the story that was trending recently. Actually, it's part of the Gen Z protests and, the recent, he's actually a blogger. he's a blogger, he's a social media person, and he was a critic of the government. He is a critic of the government, and he was actually, this is what happened to him. He was sodomized. And for those who don't understand Swahili, basically what happened there is that he was picked up. He says he was picked up by, he alleges that he was picked up by 20 county officials, and then he was taken to an undisclosed location in a hotel where there were two street boys waiting to rape him, to sodomize him. And you know, the saddest thing is that the video, the raw footage, was actually circulating social media. Unfortunately, I mean, I would never agree to watch those, but the fact is that I know that they were circulating and they're still circulating. And it's a terrible, terrible crime against humanity. It's a terrible thing that has happened to this young man. So this man has been sodomized in this way. And I also came across other videos of young men who, when they're arrested and go to prison, they are also sodomized there by fellow inmates. This is a common occurrence, and this is male on male, okay, gender-based violence, male on male gender-based violence, apart from women on female on male gender-based violence. But that means that we really have a wide array of issues to be dealing with here, and this is, I guess, what would contribute to the 30% of males reporting to have been violated either sexually or physically, in many other ways. And Sophia is saying what? It was a deliberate, yeah, this was deliberate, yeah, premeditated, pre-planned, and a way to try to oppress, to suppress people's voices. And this has happened also to women, but this show, because we're focusing on male abuse, I really want us to focus on the male abuse. So Susan, why don't you respond? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I remember just hearing about it, and in fact, you can see there, you can hear him saying, "Oh, they were not happy because." You can hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
but let me put you back. Let me put you back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about power. It's about control. It's about power, because this blogger was blogging things that they didn't want him to blog. So they decided to humiliate him, and it's an act of extreme violence. Remember when we were talking about some videos back, we were talking about how even when they're talking about war crimes, the rape of and the rape of women, and the sexual assault is considered a war crime within the context of a war, because it's an act of extreme violence, and they really wanted to debase him in the way they know. And so this was then I even saw another one where it was actually, I think, there were male partners, which in the context of two males, again, where there was, if you can call them intimate partner violence, again, that was when the two males. It's happening even in Kenya, even though it's not something that is acknowledged much, but you can find some videos. I came across one, I think, where that happened, and there's a big question about who unalived the deceased. That it seems that the relationship was one of intimate partner, or at least some sort of, if we can use the language of some sort of boyfriend situation, because intimate partner suggests a long-term relationship. That and yes, that violence is occurring, even among, in the same sex category. Some statistics that I came across is that first, the violence happens mostly between heterosexual couples, that is male on female. Second, male on male. It's that prevalent in the West. That we get that type of thing happening. But in this, the two situations, liberatory at its worst, because they really wanted to control this man so that he stops saying things that they don't want him to say. So they found the most, violent way to pass that message. And the likelihood, they thought maybe he was not going to talk about it, because of the sheer shame and embarrassment of that happening to him. The guilt also, you see, the thing that comes with some of these, especially the physical and sexual violence, is the guilt and the shame, the stigma that attaches to these things. So I think the people who were behind it were banking on him not talking about it, but changing his behavior, so that he stops blogging in a negative way. And it's really sad that we're seeing this happening. The other thing is the way the acid is being used we are finding acid being used. I mean, that is terrifying. The two cases, both Dan and George, the acid was used, and it was used by women on men. I know there are cases of, but it looks like it's a weapon of choice in those type of situations.
Let me see. Let me see if you guys have any comments about that. Yeah, Fear is saying yes, that was a very deliberate act, and it's really sad to see male on male violence like this. It's unbelievable, really unbelievable. It's a new type of crime for us here in Africa. To see that kind of sodomy, it's a new type of crime. I don't think it's torture, isn't it, Susan? It's a sort of torture, and it's very sad.
Definitely, in the first case, it was torture. That's exactly what they intended to do. But when it comes to like a relationship between intimate partners, it's still violent. It's still violent, or girlfriend or boyfriend or same-sex relationship. It's slightly different, but this one was definitely a serious. It was a political. That's why I'm saying it was impunity at its worst, because they had deliberately picked that. It's something so bad. You can see the fellow cannot even. He's so uncomfortable in his bed. You saw that, and you can imagine the long-term effects of that injury on his life, and what it's going to do to him. Fill him with terror and fear, and it's extremely painful. That's from studies, it's extremely painful. So it's something that they wanted that, and I hope they find those perpetrators.
Yeah.
That's
So
unacceptable.
thank you, Susan. So as we wind up, guys, what do you guys suggest? What do we go? Where are we going? Really, you feel so disempowered to some extent, when you listen to the male abuse victims and you hear that men have been saying it's not just women. They've been saying, hey, we too, don't forget about us. Don't forget about us. And a lot of women are like, the statistics say, the statistics say, the statistics say. The thing is that the statistics are they're not capturing information that they don't have, are they? So that if men don't come out and be counted amongst the victims of gender-based violence, or against, or of, what do you call it? Androcide. Yeah. Why don't we do that? Let's do that so that we can inform the statistics, so that we can have more accurate surveys, more accurate reports, so that, you see, the activities, the response will be relevant. It would be accurate. It would be, it would be adequate for the level of problem that we have in society. But as long as men continue to be quiet, as long as males refuse to come out and say, because of their egos, refuse to come out and state that they have a problem, we will continue being, you will be continue being overlooked and underreported.
Yeah, and I think the earlier people talk, you can prevent something just getting out of hand by talking about it early, when you see the first signs. And I think that's why it's good and it's important as part of life skills education. We're talking about this, that, it's from school. That subject should include information about, this type of how to keep yourself safe in certain situations, because how to identify and detect you are in actually a potentially very dangerous situation, and to extricate yourself before you can't. If you look at all the cases we've talked about, the Dan's case, the Farid's case, even the George case, even Maureen's case, where we talked about, and the reason why I brought case of, when you think about that, it's so important for that knowledge to be able to detect really quickly. This is a potentially very precarious situation. If George had been more self-aware, I'm talking, you say hindsight is 2020, but when we use them as real examples, that his way
Susan, we're losing
to the
you.
fact that
We
he had
keep
a
losing
daughter.
you. We keep losing you. It's so
Okay.
unfortunate. Yeah.
Hello?
But
Can you
yeah,
hear
we
me
keep
now?
losing you. Yes, I can hear you, but you see what happens that you speak and then after some time it just goes away. I think is it raining over there where you are?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what I'm
Yeah,
I'm
but
just saying that
Fia is
George.
saying that there needs to be Fia is saying that there needs to be more awareness campaigns. Police,
Yeah.
communities, and organizations should work together. Absolutely, Fia.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Police, communities, and organizations should work together. And the church. And the
Yeah.
church. There is no shame. And also the families. I would say also that because many men are close to a woman in their family, probably their mother or their aunt. I think it's good, like if you have a relationship with somebody and you have a problem, it would be good as a man to confide in another woman, an older woman who has experience with relationships and who can see, the kinds of person that you're dealing with. Because many men have a lot of blind spots around their relationships with women because men
Yeah.
are very visual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Men are very visual.
Yeah.
But if you have a sister, you have an aunt, you have somebody that you can trust, somebody who's not competitive, not another young woman not another young pretty woman. We're talking about somebody who's a relative, somebody who's not going to be a competitor. It would be good, to express, your concerns about the person that you're dating and let somebody else know that you're not comfortable with this person or that this person is abusing you. And if they are stalking you and obsessed with you, that is something to report to the police and get a sort
Yeah.
of restraining order on them.
The statistics, the KDHS statistics, they separated
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
they said, one of the questions they asked was, who do women most report for violence against them, and who do men mostly report? So they had the two categories, and we're talking about men today. So let's just talk about the men. The men's category, that men who are married, who have been married, or current or former or current spouse or intimate partner, and who the sources of who do they report for violence. And you won't believe it, the highest is teachers for men, then other persons, then wives, current wives and or intimate partners, then imagine, and then former.
Susan, wait a minute. What did you say? I didn't quite, you spoke a bit fast. Could you explain that again? Say that again.
I'm saying the KDHS of
Yeah.
2022
The survey.
statistics show, they show that for men who are married, or who are married or have ever been married, or have had an intimate partner, or in a intimate partner relationship, they were scoring the people they report to the police that have violated them, the percentages. So
Oh, I see.
the highest perpetrator for them when they report
Is
is
teachers.
teachers.
I'm not
Teachers.
surprised. Who is surprised?
I-
I'm not surprised.
Who
You know,
was it?
and yet a lot of men are told to marry teachers. You know that? A lot of men are
Teachers.
told to marry teachers and nurses and I don't know what. But actually, you know, teachers really, look at the way they behave in
Yeah,
the
teachers.
classroom. Yeah. You
Teachers,
wouldn't be
then
surprised
others.
that that's how they behave back in their homes with their husbands.
Yeah.
Female
So
teachers, yes. They're used to
teachers
being
and
in
then others.
control.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Teachers, then others, and
So
then the wife.
the highest risk to a man is a teacher. Really?
Yeah.
I think men should
Yeah.
know that. I think men should know that.
And then others, and then the wife. So even when we're talking about aboricide, we know basically, and there could be reasons why they don't talk about the wife. Maybe it's the shame of reporting that you're being battered in the home or something
Oh, I
like that.
see.
So that could be
Okay.
affecting the actual reports, but that's how it was ranked. And then for men who have never been married, it was teachers, and second was schoolmates or classmates. And then for women, just by contrast, we're not talking about women today, but for women who have never been married, it was teachers and then mother or stepmother. So those three categories all talked about the education system. They talked about teachers, and then the men who have never been married included classmates or schoolmates. So it means we have to do something about our education system. They're talking about that's where they've, they've experienced physical violence is within the setting of the school. I don't think that's a good picture at all. The other thing was that is something that should be of some concern. And like you said, there could be some variation in the percentages that are shown for men because they don't report. They don't want to talk about it. They will not say anything about it. And, it's too embarrassing to tell anybody.
Yeah. And I think
about
speaking
it.
on behalf of men, listening to men speak, they usually will not talk about their wives because men are competitive. Men would always want to project their wives positively to other men.
Yes.
Yeah. Even when their wives are actually abusing them, that they may not even recognize that that is abuse. They might actually think that that's just a trait of women. That's just women. It's a woman who's on her menses, you know? It's a woman with
Yeah.
her bad mood, her moodiness. It could be just that she's moody. She's abusing me. She's denying me food. She's denying me conjugal rights because maybe it's hormonal. Maybe it's, and actually maybe it's just abuse.
Yes,
Maybe it's just
it's
abuse.
likely to be. And there's this thing they call coercive control, and it's not easy to detect because there's no physical injury. There's no physical injury. But what will tell you that somebody's perhaps being subjected to it is over a period of time, you notice the person's personality changing. In fact, they're trying to erase you completely and make you, one of the experts I was listening to said, make you into like a puppet or a slave, a modern day slave, where you have to do exactly what that person wants you to do. So you find that, very controlling sort of situation. And that's men, I think, are subjected a lot to that by having very bossy and controlling wives. And then they're not able to make decisions, to participate. Sometimes men can opt out of a decision because they don't feel it. They don't think they can contribute to it. But there are some who are not allowed at all to make any decisions at all. So
And they'll just avoid an argument. They just avoid an argument out of shame, out of embarrassment. And the thing is, I think this is now this particular show cannot be over until we mention personality types or personality flaws. So we have people who are narcissists. Yeah. We have people who have mental health issues. We have people who have bipolar. Yeah, schizophrenia. All kinds of diseases that if they're not under control, then you can actually find yourself at home with a very dangerous person, a very, very dangerous person. And that person can actually shorten your life. whether it's physically or emotionally, or, because they say that diseases also present themselves out of stress. Stress can cause diseases, can cause conditions to come up. And so I want to warn men that this is a life or death matter. They shouldn't take it lightly at all. Even if the woman is as beautiful as Ruth, for example, a beauty queen, doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter. Because beauty, they say, is skin deep. Skin deep. Yeah. There have to be other beauty standards. There have to be other beauty standards, like the ones that you were raised with. For example, in Africa, in African tradition, a woman was considered beautiful because of her ability to cook, her ability, her empathy, her kindness. There's so many other things apart from her physical beauty, her physical looks, the fact that she's a size 10, the fact that maybe she's a size 20, whatever the physical look is supposed to be, whatever the trend, whether she's a flat behind or whether she's a big behind, whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is this person going to reduce your stress? Does this person give you peace of mind? If they don't, that's a very good sign. And it's okay to actually become a divorcee. Yeah, to have that tag. It's okay to have that tag. The idea is, again, this idea that you don't want to be, a divorcee. You don't want to be one of those people who are tagged. It's fine to be divorced. It's okay. Yeah, it's fine. Especially in this day and age. In this day and age, it's better to be alive and divorced. Yeah. Than to be dead and married. Yeah, really. Whether it's even dead physically or dead emotionally, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You could be dead emotionally.
In Ruth's case, the judge said, she said, you heard the strong words she used. She said, you're not remorseful. You see the way that the knife, you use the knife, you seem to be enjoying it because you sort of savored, you took your time doing it and stuff like that. And she said, you were disappointed about his choices about the relationship, and it caused you to react in such an extreme way. And she said, we have to pass a message to other young people that this is not the way to resolve relationships. You don't just, unalive your somebody because they've not agreed with you. And so she said, she used the word, she said, it's not cool. It's not cool to respond in such a way. But of course, it's a personality type that would be responding in such a way, because if you gave variables and different personality types, most women, in fact, 99% will walk away from the situation. They will not even think of picking a knife to cause injury or stuff like that. So she had that choice and she didn't take it. So the judge was saying, it's not cool. That's not how you resolve problems. And so the young lady, despite her degree in law and all that, she'll have to practice it when she's in jail. She cannot be released. Yeah. And she's, like I told you, she was only 21 when she did that. And that's it.
Wow. Talk about a person who's psychopaths, by the way, sociopaths. They're there. Yeah, we have sociopaths, psychopaths, both male and female. They're there. So I think that we should be intelligent and we should have some sense of emotional intelligence, and not just rush into. It's not even about rushing. Sometimes you can get into a relationship with a perfect person very fast, and sometimes you can wait and end up with a real narcissist, a sociopath. So it's not really about the timing. It's about reading the signs. It's about reading the person. So I think, Susan, at this point, I'd like to close, and I am going to be the first to say good night or good day, wherever you are watching us from. If you're watching us from the States, good day. Have a nice rest of the day. I hope you have a thoughtful day, and please don't feel guilty if you, as a male, have to leave your partner. Don't, because there's something called co-parenting. You can co-parent your child. You have rights. You have rights to your children. Many men actually stay in their relationships for the same reasons that women do, because of the love of their kids. So what I want to say is co-parenting is fine. I'll leave you with what I told my son. I have a son who's over 30 years old, and I told him, if you end up in an abusive relationship or long-term partnership, and I am not even any longer in this world, I tell you, I shall disturb the energy of the earth until you leave that person. Yes. And that's because, you see, we are energy. We are energy. And so you should talk to your children, talk to your kids, tell them that it's okay for them to come back home. Even if it's a male, even if it's a man, even if it's a boy, a male child that you have, you need to tell your male child as a parent. Yeah, if you're a parent of a male child, you need to let them know that, guess what? In your mother's house is always a room for you. Always. The same way that also girls should be told the same thing, so that males feel comfortable coming back to their parents' house in case of any sort of danger. Because, by the way, you did give birth to them. You did. You were here before they existed, so you know more. You're wiser. So that's what one should always tell their male children and their female children, that if things are not working outside there, it's okay. Come back. Come back home. And if not come back home, I will help you to set up somewhere else. Yeah. Help them to set up somewhere else if they can't come back home for whatever reason. Yeah. Or encourage them to set up somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. So on that note, from me, it's good night, guys. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Everybody in the comment section. Thank you so much for being here. Lynn, Fia, Angela, and I'll let Susan end it as usual. Mama, Mato, yes. And everybody else who did not come into our StreamYard, and those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube, asanteni sana. So, Susan, please, last words for us. And thank you so much again, Susan, for the great research that you've done, and the fact that you're a lawyer always adds some justification, and, it gives us some, some value, a lot of value for whatever it is that we talk about here on the show.
Yeah, so it's tragic. We can see that it's tragic. GBV, whether it's male victims or female victims, is tragic. The devastation is long lasting. The impact, when you look at it on the macro scale, you can imagine how it affects productivity, and it's something that we really need to fight against. And the courts are doing their job. It really depends on the evidence that is provided. You can find perpetrators walking out and continue to to devastate their victims. But let's hope that over time we become more sensitive and aware and can just identify red flags in behavior that is not correct. Of course, the idea really is to also have to rehabilitate people, to prevent things before things get out of hand. Identify them before we have to deal with so much pain and anguish. And we thank God for people like Dan, who's courageous enough to share his story as a man. And sadly, George and Farid are not there to tell their stories, and there are many families which have been devastated by it. So let's do all we can to say no to physical violence against men, and no to physical violence against women, boys, and girls. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. I wanted to end also with Angie's recommendation. She recommended that we go and read this material, this book called Confessions of Nairobi Men. She says some of the stories are heartbreaking. Men do go through a lot. So if you want to learn more about this, even as a man, know that you're not alone. If you are experiencing this, you are not a failure. And you do have a chance to have a good and happy relationship. So keep safe, everybody, and good night. Thank you very much for everybody being here. See you on Friday. Bye-bye. Good night. Kwaheri. Mm-hmm.